You know, some of the key messages about pumps are that pumps are not for everybody, that some people, they're a choice, and that some people choose, they're a choice as long as you can afford it. Some people aren't able to afford it, but that doesn't mean they can't have good diabetes control.
It takes some pretty intensive efforts on the part of our diabetic care teams, the nurse and the nutritionist, and the physician, to do the switchover and the teaching from the needles to the pump. So when the families decide they're ready to go, we put them on the wait list, so it could be a couple months. We try to pick a time of the year when it's good for families and good for the kids to make the switch, often in the summer times, but not always, depending on the circumstances. And then it's a question for the first couple weeks. The family and I are in very close contact, as are the nurses.
I think it's not something that we want people to be alarmed about, but just be prepared for, and to know what the pump can and can't do, what it is and what it isn't. I think that sometimes it's families with diabetes, but sometimes it's a healthcare professional from another field who says, oh, you should have a pump, that's the best way to manage diabetes, or a family member that says, oh, your child needs a pump. And really that's because there's often a misconception out there that if you have a pump, then the pump's going to do the work for you and take care of your diabetes, and in fact that's not true. It's still the parents and the child together with their diabetes team's advice who manage the diabetes and still have to do a lot of decision making and a lot of work. The pump is just a vehicle for insulin delivery.
And it is a wonderful tool if the dedication and commitment is there. However, the perception to some people is that it is just a pancreas, that if you put it on, it works by itself, but that's not the case.
The pump, however, is a machine that needs lots of human input, needs lots of TLC, and it needs guidance and direction. It will do all the little picky points for you, but you still have to check your sugar several times a day. You still have to think about how many carbs you're having to input it. You have to push the button on the pump even when the alarm goes off. Some of the kids forget to do that, to give themselves boluses. So it still puts a lot of onus on the human beings to manage their diabetes.
So I show them the 3 pumps. They have to decide if this is the pump for them. And usually when I show them all 3 pumps, the family goes, that's the pump for me. So because there are some distinct differences between them, they decide what's important to them and pick the pump from there.
The first couple of days, they were a big learning curve. It was very new, trying to figure out how all the buttons work, where to press the buttons go to. But now I find it's a lot easier and I can get through it in a couple seconds.
So depending on what your needs are, people are happier. And I guess as a diabetes educator, I want my families to be happy. They're dealing with a lifelong chronic disease, type 1 diabetes. So if we as educators can offer them a tool that makes their quality of life better, then I'm all for it. Doesn't mean it's making their life easier, but it makes their life better, and I want them to live their life the way they want to live it, not the way their insulin wants them to live it.
Diabetes works best with a team because each discipline brings different things to the care of the child with diabetes. We have the physicians who help with the diagnosis and help with adjusting the insulin, but everything works together. The food and the insulin and the activity. There's so many factors that affect the management of diabetes that we do need a full team approach, and the parents and the children and teens are part of that team as well.
I mean, with younger people, of course, you're not only putting the child on a pump, you're putting the parents on the pump. So you have to educate, they have to be well educated in the mechanics, I guess, of the pump, as well as the carb counting.
Across Nova Scotia now, throughout diabetes centres, we have standardized tools to help families move to pump therapy. And that is of such benefit to our healthcare teams, because we do work in teams, but we all have individual sections that we have to cover. So now we have the confidence that if the dietitian is teaching you one thing and I'm teaching you as a nurse, families as a nurse something else, we are all working from the same page.
We're very fortunate in our province that recently we have a protocol for families who want to start pumps. It's a tool for the diabetes educators and for the families to make sure that they're properly prepared to start on an insulin pump.
When you use an insulin pump and you're troubled by your child being sick with an illness or a cold or a flu, you may fear, how are you going to manage that sick day? I can say to you that with some of the tools that and tips that we share, you just continue to check your glucose frequently, and with the pump you can make small corrections with insulin in the sugars and feel safer. You continue to offer fluids and check the glucose and check the ketones as you would normally, but the pump does offer you some temporary control that you didn't have before with shots. When you put a shot on board with a child that was vomiting before pump, you feared hypoglycemia if they vomited after the injection. With the pump, you temporarily can stop insulin, you can temporarily increase it, you can temporarily decrease it, and we make sure that you understand what that means during pump training. It may sound technical, but it actually is much easier and gives families more peace of mind.
So again, I guess that's another thing that is very important if you're going to consider a pump for your child, is what's going to happen when the child's in school. In different places in Nova Scotia, it is different. We're fortunate in the Valley that our school board supports pumps in the school and has the right things in place to keep these kids safe.
The teacher's role is also to help recognize and treat hypoglycemia, but that's whether a person's on a pump or not on a pump. They're not responsible to do things like change pump sites, and if the child's sick enough to need that, then parents should be coming to gather the child and take them home and manage that at home.